Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today I am going to be trying to attempt to draw one of my OCs into the kind of Honkai Star Rail splash art-ish kind of style, and I kind of sketched out some preliminary sketches in my sketchbook of both Masaki and my OC Koji. So we are actually going to be drawing my OC Koji today, and as you can see I did very little sketches of him prior to recording today's session, so I do apologize that a lot of his, I guess, like elements of quote-unquote his design's gonna look like might look very disjointed. I am not very proficient in doing a lot of design work or anything like that, or especially for like characters that are supposed to be in a particular world or anything like that. So I'm kind of using Koji a little bit as practice for myself. So I'll put up like a reference or two of a few artworks that I do have of my OC Koji, so you guys can get a little bit more familiar, since I don't draw him too much for videos. So, to start off, similar to how I did my drawing my OC Masaki into the Genshin Impact kind of splash art style as well, I'm going to do something similar where I'm going to do a little bit of planning by doing some sketches kind of separately from doing the splash art, just so we can kind of get some colors down, as well as trying to get a little bit of a feel of the outfit for his design. So for kind of like in my brain, if I had to place all my OCs kind of into the Honkai Star Rail setting, now this is gonna have very light spoiler-ish I don't know how to explain it. Like information about the game. So if you want absolutely zero information about this, skip like further down the video, and hopefully I don't talk about it too much. But I'm just gonna be basically talking about certain areas of places in Honkai Star Rail, so that we can better place my OCs into each area to kind of curate their design and kind of their purpose in the kind of particular environment that they're in. So in my brain, I kind of established that initially I wanted all four of my OCs to be in separate areas, just because then I could diversify a bit more of the designs. But in my brain, it makes sense for kind of like Masaki and Koji, and maybe even Sato. I'm gonna push her into a different area, but I feel like they would fit better into the, I don't know if it's called the underground or the underworld, but it's basically the area underneath Bellabog. And I don't know, I just feel like that setting would fit better. So for Koji, I actually have him kind of designed to be similar to an upcoming character, Luca. And I feel like Koji would be like a fighter type. If anything, he'd be interested in maybe boxing or something. Maybe he looks up to Luca or some sort, and he'd probably participate at that fighting arena place. The current event is held there, and there's like Mr. Dig or whatever. So yeah, I feel like he would be in that kind of a setting. So I did have him with like bandages on his hands. I did have him have boxing gloves near his waist and a few like belts, so maybe he could carry more equipment or anything around there. I had him have knee pads and elbow pads, and kind of just like a somewhat loose jacket on top. Now, in my brain, I'm gonna keep saying this because a lot of the stuff that I'm gonna say I didn't really follow through at the very end, and I kind of didn't like the fact that I didn't follow through with it. But I think it's like from the lack of preparation that I had. So I'm gonna say this, that if you guys want to see me draw my other OCs, Masaki probably be next, since I kind of have his design more fleshed out. But if you want to see Sato or Akemi as well, do let me know, and I'll try my best to put them all into one video together, because I was gonna do Koji and Masaki together and then Sato and Akemi together, but I got burnt out a little bit too quickly this week, so I haven't been liking a lot of my drawings, finishing a lot of my drawings, so we're gonna kind of slow down a little bit. But if you guys want to see that, do let me know. So you saw on my sketch page, I did do a little bit of planning of the colors and just a few sketches of Koji, so I can get a little bit of a better idea, and it's been a while since I've drawn him. But we're gonna go ahead and go into the splash art sketching portion. So I'm planning out a pose, and I realized this pose was too close to what Hook looks like, kind of with the leg and the arm placement, so I decided to change it because I didn't want it to be too similar to anybody's pose, basically. So if you're not familiar with their splash art, a lot of them have like usually the environment around them. Some of them do have their weapons, but a lot of them is just basically seemingly like they're in some kind of environment. So I wanted to kind of include that into Koji's splash art as well. But I'm gonna struggle a little bit because, like I said, I didn't really plan out a lot of things, so color palette wasn't very thought out very well, so I'm gonna struggle a little bit trying to balance things to look correctly, and I'm gonna add some effects afterwards that seem more of an afterthought. So for me, everything kind of seems like a little bit more disjointed. So as I'm kind of sketching, and then later on we're gonna get to the line work, and then the coloring, and then final effects. Yeah, we're just gonna go through the entire process. I know I moved the canvas a lot. Hopefully having the little mini views of each of kind of like the Koji piece that I'm working on currently and the one of his actual design that I had kind of planned out in my brain is gonna help, because I pan a lot when I draw digitally, especially on the tablet and stuff. So I apologize that I moved the canvas like a heck of a lot. So you can see that I did some indications of like swooshes and potentially some environment that he could be in, and I went for an entire whole thing of like trying to figure out what brushes I used to use for things, because I haven't had time to really sort out my Clip Studio paint brushes. But I'll make sure to leave any of the brushes in the description, so if you guys are interested in the different brushes that I used, you can definitely check them out. But yeah, back to kind of the placement. So I would kind of assume Koji and Masaki would be in the underworld or underground area, and that makes sense with how I want Koji to kind of participate in that fighting arena kind of thing. And then Masaki, I do think I still want him to be somewhat involved in plants or agriculture or botany or something of the sorts in the underground, even though it does seem a bit scarce. But if you look at Natasha's design, she does have some sort of either liquids, I believe some kind of like glowing plants or something in like test tubes or in the little glass jar thing on her, kind of like around her clavicle area. And I feel like it would be interesting to have Masaki kind of like do research and experiments on how to grow some kind of, I don't know, vegetation or something in the underground to the best of his ability, and, you know, kind of curate his design around that, which I think would be fun to do. But once I figure out Sato and Akemi's, I would also like to do them as well. So for Sato, I would want her to be more or less on the upper side. So instead of the underground, I want her to be probably in Billabong, so on the surface with the cold. And because Sato's background's more towards like pastries and desserts and stuff, I feel like she would work better up there. And I always associate with her like with ice Pokemon anyways, if I want to put them in a Pokemon like AU. And I don't know, so I feel like the environment of it wouldn't bother her as much, and it'd be fun to kind of design maybe some armor aspects for her design as well. But for Akemi, so I did not want him to be near Billabong. I also don't think he fits in the, I don't remember the other place's name, but basically more of the Chinese inspired, the one where like Jinyan's from, Xuxiang, and like a few other characters like Tingyun is also from there. I don't think he fits in that environment either, and because the game hasn't progressed any farther than some of the places that we currently have, I decided that it'd make more sense that Akemi would be more in the space station, so like Herta's spaceship. So that's kind of like where my brain is setting each of the characters into, and I think it would be fun to include Hansuke at some point too, just as a creature of some sort. But let me talk a little bit about the coloring portion. So for the backgrounds for a lot of the splash art, a lot of them have very, I don't know, they're really pretty, by the way. You should really check out their splash art. Both the character designs, the character artwork, along with the backgrounds and elements for the splash art are all beautiful. So apologies, mine's gonna look very crude. Yeah, I feel like because I didn't put my entire effort and thought process into planning everything nicely, I don't think this turned out the way I wanted to. So for me, I wanted to have Koji's background to be more or less in the similar like fighting arena. So I'm gonna put the kind of cage looking wire, I don't know, call it like mesh, not mesh, just the cage portion, I guess, the fencing or whatever you want to call it in the background, and kind of hanging around in the back along with the background, I guess, is kind of like punching bags and stuff, because I took screenshots and I was kind of trying to look at the lighting and some of the elements that they had in there. And I think if I actually took the background into consideration, it would have made a little bit more sense on how to pose Koji, because I have him more in a floaty pose. But some characters, let's say like Asta, Jingyun, who else is there? Xushang, trying to think who else, Tingyun a little bit too. They're basically more or less interacting with their environment. So they're like either sitting in like a place, sitting on a tree, or Asta's like with her telescope and stuff. And it makes sense that they're kind of like embedded into their environment. And then you have some that are like, I think more like Hook. And I guess like Sampo is kind of like in between. He's kind of more in a floaty pose, and it's kind of more just like a background of like the sky. And then Hook is kind of more or less like just a big whooshing element with some cute little drawings in the back. And I kind of went with the more floaty route and just placed a background in the back. But I think it would have been nice to make another attempt maybe in the future where I could have Koji either in the ring, you know, like preparing for a fight or something, or at the very bottom of like the ledge of like stair steps in front of the building. Could have been cool too. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I think interacting with the background could have been a smarter choice for the background, and it would help me with the color portion as well. But in terms of the style for drawing my OC in, I don't think I replicated the style very well at all. It was hard for me to figure out which character to kind of reference, since Koji's body type and age group isn't really, I don't know, it's hard for me to pinpoint which kind of character I could use as a reference point, because Hook seems a little bit too young for how I would draw Koji, and a lot of the male characters tend to be, you know, either I guess like in their teens-ish. I don't know. Yanqing's age is a little ambiguous from what I've read. But there's nothing that's kind of like in the more younger boys-ish age range. So I feel like I'm gonna have an easier time doing with the other characters. So apologies that this is probably not gonna read correctly. I think the hair turns out okay. I did do my best to kind of keep it more or less a little painterly, a little bit cell shady, a mixture between, and like some soft gradients here and there just to make sure things look a little bit more cohesive. And then the clothing, I accidentally did a little bit of a mistake on my end in terms of recording, but I'll talk about that when we get there. So for Koji, I actually had to keep changing his skin tone to be a little bit more tan and darker every so often, because sometimes when I do his skin tone, I don't realize how pale I make him sometimes because I don't have the other surrounding colors around him. But also my reference that I had open on the left side, I made his skin tone a little bit too dark. So I'm gonna have to kind of play around with it. I'm even like debating if I want to incorporate more green into his hair like I did before. So, you know, it's just, I think this is me being fussy about just Koji in general, and then I have problems with his design. It's just me kind of messing up a bunch of things altogether. But I do think it's a fun exercise to do some kind of splash artwork, either it's from any games that maybe you play for like gacha games. This could be, I don't know, Arknights, Grand Blue Fantasy, I think is another one, or even like people do cookie run ones. Genshin Impact is a very popular one as well. I don't know, I think they're fun, definitely. And the more I play like other gachas, I do play Famous, like Tears of Famous, and I play Ensemble Stars, and I think it'd be cute to do some card versions of my OCs, maybe for Ensemble Stars, or even doing Genshin Impact characters in Ensemble Stars style. I think could be fun, because sometimes when I actually, let me talk about this before I get into another tangent. So for Koji, the coloring of his clothing, I accidentally did not hit record when I did the general shading and the shadows for his clothing, so I do apologize about that. So I kind of missed all of that. But so basically for the entire clothing portion, I used the multiply blend mode layer and did all the shadows and just did a little bit of color adjustment here and there. And then for the highlights, I noticed on Hook's outfit, a lot of the stuff have more of a sharper highlight for portions of her clothing. Let's say like even like little tassels or like belt or ribbon type clothing alongside with just the edges, kind of like rim lighting in a sense. So I decided to set my highlights to screen just to make sure that's on the lighter side. After that, I merged the multiply layer with the clothing layer, and then I merged my screen layer with the original color layer, and then we can start to paint after I alpha lock it, which is kind of like the state that I'm working on right now. And I'm basically trying my best to kind of emulate the, I don't know how to explain the style of both Genshin and Honkai Star Rail's artwork. They're both very soft yet very simple-ish looking because of the way they block in shadows or have just very subtle color shifts in certain areas. But for the most part, it seems very painterly in a sense. It's not quite hard cell shading, if that makes sense. So if you take a close look at it, I definitely like that look a lot, but I can never emulate it because I don't think I'm taking the proper time to, make things look the way they should look if I wanted to emulate that particular style. So I tried my best, but I definitely don't think it reads entirely correctly, but I did try because sometimes I default to cell shading whenever I do line work, just because it does feel more or less like a coloring book for myself. But for some other details on Koji, I did decide that I wanted to add the stars because I believe, is it the current event? I believe there's some kind of detailing that looks like glowing stars and stuff, and I thought it'd be cute to include that for Koji. So I have that on a little tag on his jacket. I have a little bit on his gloves as well. And then when we get to the effects, I'll kind of accentuate that because I feel like maybe I'll just have stars as a reoccurring theme for Koji. Kind of like if you KO somebody and you make them see stars. I feel like that kind of ties in. So because I was kind of referencing Hooks a little bit, I subconsciously did similar color scheme of the little flames surrounding Koji. So it's kind of like white, yellow, and kind of like orangey color. But I decided to change it because it didn't really fit Koji and it read too much as like fire. So I decided to change it to more of like white, a subtle lighter blue, and then kind of a red. Just because it fits its color scheme a little bit more. I also added some glowing parts because I feel like it just makes it a little bit more punchier. And the part where I'm adding the orange and making it really light is just to help sync back some of the elements of Koji into the background, just by making it look like it's fading in. And then here are the stars, like I said, that I wanted to include. I'm going to change the colors to be more of a goldish yellow and a white, so it kind of matches his overall color scheme, which tends to be the primary colors. So yeah, that's kind of where I ended up with in terms of the background and stuff and the elements. And I also noticed that the background tends to have more like faded edges or like painterly strokes, kind of just to add more of that kind of like fade in effect. So I did do that to the best of my ability. I also didn't like how flat these looked, so I'm deciding to give them a little bit more dimension, a little bit of highlight and shadow here and there. I just think it looks a little bit better. And then with a few color adjustments, I think that will be pretty much the end for Koji's artwork. I will make sure to have more references up next time when I actually do this for Masaki, Satoru, and Akemi next time. But here's Koji. So here are the sketches we did before we did the splash art, and then back to the splash art. But at the very end, right here, I actually made the kind of fake summoning screen for you guys. So yeah, I'll show that at the very end, and I did try my best, but yeah, I'm not entirely pleased with the end result. But I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!